Hey everyone, Dan Furr here. Let's make a patch from scratch on the Rev2. That's the patch we're going to go ahead and create. So you can see it's a little bit of a pitch warbly, kind of pitch bend up sort of patch that really gives you a lot of fun warbly characteristics. Is kind of the only way I can describe it in that classic Prophet tone. So let's see how it's created. So initially we'll just create a basic patch and start off again with the oscillators. So oscillator 1's going to be a Sawtooth at your stock C2, right? Just sort of show you C2. We're going to have the fine tune at 0. The shape mod's going to be 88. Give us a nice little shape mod. We're going to have our sub octave at 38. So just give that a slight little bit there. Noise is going to be at 22. And we're going to turn oscillator sync on and stack that with another Sawtooth, just one octave up at C2. Or C3, I should say. My apologies, C3. Giving us a little bit of grit. And we'll add the shape mod at nothing, mix halfway at about 64, and then add a little bit of oscillator slop because it always brightens things up or gives it a bit of color. We like that. Go around 23. 23 should be good. Just crank that up to 23. And here's where we're kind of at. That's kind of our tone so far. Nothing too exciting, but with most Prophet patches, the color comes in from the filter. So we'll set a 4-pole at 105 with no resonance. I want that to be pretty clean. So there we go. No resonance. Our envelope's amount is going to be plus 127. Velocity is going to be set at 0. Key mod is going to be at 0. Our key amount's going to be at 0. And audio mod, let's bring this up to 94 to give it a bit of that filter brightness from the oscillator, right? Because this is taking the oscillator and modulating the filter with it at that speed, at that audio rate speed, giving us quite a bit of movement, quite a bit of color. So let's move that at around, I don't know, 94 maybe, I think is kind of where I want it. There we go, and now we can see it sounding a little bit clicky, but that's okay. We'll fix that in the envelopes, but not necessarily the filter envelope. Filter, delay at 0, attack at 0, decay at 45, kind of right around there. There we go. We've already fixed the clickiness. Problem solved. Sounding great. But we'll give it a bit more release at 39. Here we are. Bam. There we go. And that's essentially our oscillators and our filters. So let's move on to the amp envelope. All right. So for the amp envelope, we're going to have our pan at 0, our amount all the way at 127. Then we're basically going to want 0 velocity, 0 delay, 0 attack, 0 decay, sustain at 127, and release just around 40, just to give us that ringing out that we're going to want. But we don't really want much else from the envelope because the filter envelope is doing most of that dynamics already. And that's our amp envelope. So let's move on off to the LFOs. So in this patch, we're really just using 2 LFOs to kind of get our movement. And the first LFO is going to be a triangle wave set to the filter cutoff. So there we go. And this one, I have my frequency set off at around 64 here. And I have my amount set to 68. And I personally have no sync on this one, but this is where you can experiment a little bit with your patch. If you want this to ring exactly or be in tempo exactly with your song, then you can turn the click sync on, and that will give you a little bit more drop to your tempo kind of wobble, right? Because this is what this LFO is doing. That's giving us that initial filter wobble that we kind of notice throughout the patch. And if you want that to be wobbling in tempo of your song, you can hit click sync. Now, key sync is also optional. I have it, I personally like it off because it adds a little bit of flutter in between when the notes can ring. But if you click key sync, right, you can actually link the oscillators a little bit more and have it be really, really rigid and locked in tempo. Again, like I say, my preference is to have those off because it gives a little bit more randomness and variability that I really quite appreciate. And that's kind of our LFO1. So let's move on to LFO2. With the LFO wave, again, it's going to be a triangle wave going to oscillator 1 frequency. And that's going to be frequency around 18. I'm going to set that down to 18. And the amount's going to be 41. And this one does not need sync as well, because this is kind of just a minimal. Giving us a little bit more dynamics and movement to the sound. But where this patch really comes to life is in the auxiliary envelope. So let's go set that up. And so what we want to do is set that destination to oscillator all frequency, and our amount's going to be set at -127 to really make that revert. Velocity at 0, delay at 0, attack is ever so slightly just going to be at 13 here, and then our decay is going to be at 67 here, and then sustain is at 0, and release is at 0. And that gives us this kind of pitch flutter that we were hearing in the initial patch. Right, so that's where we can see the actual sort of pitch shifting up element of this patch comes from, is from the auxiliary envelope. And the last thing I'm using is just one last source in the modulation matrix to route the oscillator shape to be affected by the auxiliary envelope as well, just to give it a bit more movement with the pitch shifting. So let's go set that up. So here we go. Source is going to be envelope 3 here. Let's go find it. Oh, I passed it. Envelope 3, there we go. Our amount is going to be -11. And our destination is going to be oscillator all shape. Oscillator all shape. Actually, no, sorry, oscillator 1 shape. Just oscillator 1 shape, just to give it a little bit more movement. And here we go. You can immediately hear without that, we have... Bring that down, just back down to 11. It just gives it a bit more brightness and color that really livens up the sound a little bit. Now, the last thing that I have on this patch is just a little bit of reverb to taste, and this is completely optional. There's no need to do it on the Rev2. You can do it on board, you can do it off board, you can do it wherever, but in this patch, these are the settings that I used. Just found the reverb here, and then I've got mix at around 42. I've got time at about 63 here. And then roughly the tone is about 100, just around there. And that gives us this. Yeah, bring that mix down ever so slightly. And that's how we make this patch. It's a cool, kind of warbly, Prophet-sounding, pitch-shifting up patch that really, really does its thing for me. I really quite enjoy this one. So hopefully you do too, and hopefully you create some fun songs with it. If you do, let me know. I'd love to hear them. As always, have a good one. Cheers.